So, where in your life are you chained? And by chained, I mean stuck, attached, hung up, whatever term you like to use. We oftentimes spend the bulk of our life fighting against certain aspects of our desires to have, to be, to do, that we sometimes feel like we're I guess, kind of stuck in part of a unfulfilled dream, if you will. And what I mean by an unfulfilled dream is a lot of times our basic desires for certain things become the very prison in which we're wanting to escape from. And this is generally due to this idea of a mental emotional attachment. We essentially mentally or emotionally chain ourselves to certain objects, certain people, certain situations, certain ideals, certain beliefs. And those chaining events tend to give us the actual thing that we are hoping to avoid by chaining ourselves to these different ideas, people, events, etc. Now, this idea of attachment is that we have, instead of kind of seeing life the way it is, we see it more as way we see it, our own perceptions. Part of this channel is about expanding perceptions. But a lot of times, all of our perceptions get stuck on what's familiar or what's comfortable or what makes sense to us at a certain time and place in our lives. And then we don't generally tend to go back and question those assumptions and to really dig in as like, what's driving me? And so what we end up having is this feeling of being chained in our life. So for some people, it may take the role of work, to where getting ahead at work becomes such a necessity that they trade their health for. Status for other people, to be seen as some kind of super powerful person, or to win some awards, or to get their name in lights. They sacrifice their mental, emotional, and sometimes physical health. With relationships, we set our mind that there's only one person that we can ever love and have in our life. And when that person doesn't want to play a part in our fantasy of how it goes, we feel naturally a deep set of anguish. But if we're really chained, it's even more anguish, to where moving people sometimes to end their lives because that individual's not in their life. So these attachments that we have a lot of times end up running our lives. And who we think we are not really who we are, but almost a reactive nature to move toward that which we desire and away from that which we don't want. And what ends up happening is we start to shape our whole life around this sometimes ludicrous idea that the world is supposed to go the way that we want it to. And we have to have whatever the object of our desire is, or we'll feel pretty depressed, pretty angry, cheated, whatever adjective you want to put in there from a negative perspective. So, why I'm asking this question is where you're chained. The first step is to just notice that somewhere in your life, you probably are chained. We all are. Some people it's just one area, some people it's multiple areas. But to take an honest examination of that. If someone's getting under your skin all the time in your family, well, that might be a source of where you're chained. Maybe your expectations for how they should behave are not really meeting the reality of how they're behaving. So you've been chained to this idea that they're supposed to be nice to you, and unfortunately, they didn't get that memo. So it's a lot of just kind of seeing things as it is rather than our expectations and our attachments to some ideal about how the world could be. If you are in a present job to where your income is much lower than you want, you certainly can work to increase it. But if by increasing it you're robbing yourself of peace of mind, health, stability in your life, to meet some arbitrary number figure, maybe it's time to say, okay, why am I chained to this number? Beyond, I need, the basic of bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of shelter, food, clothing, that kind of thing. What is it about this number that's way high up that is chaining me that I feel I have to have it? So once you're really clear on what's chaining you in your life, I highly recommend actually sitting down with a piece of paper and taking one side of the paper and writing all the benefits that you derive from this chained process. There are benefits to it. Even if they're not logical, you perceive them. So, for example, if a person's in a relationship with a very dysfunctional person, it's this codependent yuck, there's a lot of negatives, but there's also got to be some positives, or that person wouldn't continue to stay in that attached yuck of a relationship. So, step one is write down all the things that you get out of that. Step two is on the other side of the paper, write down all the things that it's costing you. And then sit back and just really weigh those two. And you have to be honest with yourself. You know, if, like, for example, if getting that extra big bit of money is because you want to buy a much bigger, grander house, maybe listing that as the positive, but then also asking yourself, you know, what is it about that house? Where am I chained to that? And to get, you know, more and more into this whole idea of where you are basically attaching yourself in an unhealthy attachment to life, and starts to kind of free yourself when you don't just see one side of the equation, you see both sides, and then sometimes both sides equal out, sometimes one's more than another. So the more we're aware of our chains, the easier it is then in time to remove those chains. Start sitting with that thing and noticing how you feel in your body. If you're getting a tightness in your chest, or gritting of your teeth, you might want to examine that thing that you're hoping will turn out a certain way, and that's probably where you're chained. So you can't really change anything that you don't acknowledge. So it's important to say, yep, there are these places in my life where I feel chained and attached and stuck, and to really sit down and investigate, what do you get out of staying there, and what do you not get out of staying there. And then having a clear perspective, then it's easier to act when we're honest with ourselves about where we need to go in our lives, so that we can unchain ourselves and move into a different perspective. Sometimes we put so much energy on something that we're so rigidly chained that we miss all the possibilities and opportunities to have and do and be the things that we originally wanted to be. But because we're so focused on this one area of our life, we miss a lot of those opportunities. So, something to maybe think about today and play with.